Hi, hello, and welcome to the Read Books, Be Kind podcast, where I, your host, Amy Prokopis, hang out with other authors and bookish people and talk about bookish and authorly things. Whether you are listening to us, watching us on YouTube, or watching the extended version on Patreon, we are glad that you are here. Today's episode will be just us, just me, just you, the listener. I do have plans to invite guests on and share this podcast with more people and this platform. So I do plan to have guests on. So make sure to share this podcast with somebody you think would enjoy listening, and also share it with people who you think might enjoy being a guest on the show. So I'm always open to feedback and new ideas. So make sure you leave those below in the comments if you're watching me on YouTube, or send them to me on social media. I am all over social media. In the show notes and the description, all of my links will be there to all of my social media accounts and my books and such, yada, yada, yada. So there's just a little bit of an intro for those who don't know me, because this is our very first episode. Some of you may have just stumbled upon this on YouTube or come across it on Spotify. So if you are new here, my name is Amy Prokopis, and I am a fantasy romance author. I have, I think, 7 books out now. Oh my gosh. By the end of this year, in 2025, I should be up to 10 books, I think. I am an editor. I edit books. I am a former English teacher and reading teacher. I also taught German in public schools for quite some time. I was a school counselor. I am finishing all of my credentials to be an LPC, which stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. And I am also on YouTube. I post weekly vlogs all about my process as an author, what I do day to day, how I write. I share all of that every single Sunday in vlog format. I also share special episodes where I do how-tos and other information just about how to write books, how I write books. And I post those on Wednesday along with the episodes of this podcast. So fun things. Again, my description box and the show notes will have all of my information, so you can check out my books. I promise you're going to love it. I write everything from deeper, sort of gritty, darker fantasy to light and fluffy fantasy. So thank you to those of you who are readers, and welcome to those of you who are brand new to my channel. On another personal note, I am more than just an author, and I want my authentic self to come through in these podcast episodes, because authenticity and being real is super, super important to me as a creator and an author. And ultimately, what we write as creative people, especially as authors, we are putting our heart and soul into it. And so I think a little bit of authenticity, it's really hard not to put that into what you create. And so it's super important to me that I showcase the realness that is behind the books and the writing and all of that. So I'm a mom to a 4-year-old boy. I'm a wife. We have a Havanese, which basically is just a Cuban Shih Tzu with a little bit of a friendlier disposition. She is amazing. I love her. And that's just a little bit about me. I hate cheese and I like to run. So you guys will learn lots more about me as you continue through this podcast. Thank you guys for listening. What is Read Books, Be Kind? This entire podcast really has been years in the making. I've always wanted to do a podcast. It's been in the back of my mind. I did a series on my YouTube channel where I interviewed a bunch of different authors and writers, because I wanted to learn more about other people's process. And I thought, why not show that online also? Because I wanted to watch it and I couldn't find a lot there. So why not post it so that other people can also get the same information that I was learning? So I did that years ago, and I've been itching to do a podcast ever since. And when the Read Books, Be Kind campaign first started, it was the perfect opportunity to launch something that was authentic and real and deeper than just my love of writing and reading, and also about taking care of yourself, mental health representation, and just showing the vulnerable side of what it can be like day in and day out being a creator. So Read Books, Be Kind itself was inspired by an idea that a coworker of mine had when I was a school counselor. So I was a school counselor for 3 years in a very kind of low income area in a public school. And of course, just like teachers and school staff everywhere, we were underfunded. We didn't have a lot of resources, and there were not a lot of us working all together. So we ended up working very closely together because you kind of have to lean on each other when you're in an environment where you have to come up with resources yourself sometimes, and you need just to lean on other people for help quite often. And so we were all really close in the department. We were coming up with ideas constantly, not just to like provide extra resources to our students and our staff members, but also to do it in kind of a streamlined way. So we were trying to come up with ideas that would not only meet a need that we saw, but would also try to help alleviate in different areas. So one of those was a kindness campaign my coworker came up with. She had all these kinds of ideas, and it was basically in the brainstorming phase, and we were so busy all the time with such large caseloads that we never could get around to putting together this kindness campaign. But it was something in the 3 years that we worked together that she would bring up from time to time. She would say, I think it'd be really cool to do a kindness campaign where we take a week of the school year and we just do something nice and something mental health related, and just to share positivity and just to encourage people to do good works for others at school and to encourage empathy in our students. And I loved this idea. Her and I both really adhered to this. We wanted to do it, but there was no time in our schedule. We were so busy. And so the kindness campaign was something in the brainstorming phase on the back burner forever and ever and ever. And it would come back around to the front of our minds every now and then. And one day I was having a really rough time as a school counselor. I was super busy. It was fulfilling to work with young people, especially. I love working with young people, but the demands of the job and the gigantic workload was just really wearing on me. I was trying to balance that with writing and being an author, and I felt like I was doing so much in all areas of my life that I wasn't seeing the payoff I wanted, and I wasn't getting the feeling of success that was motivating to me. So I was just constantly running on empty. It was about January of last year, so January 2024, and I started to notice that my mental health had really taken a hit. I've always been really upfront and honest. I have anxiety. I have been in therapy for a very long time to work on coping with anxiety and developing tools. And I have a lot of tools now, but in 2024, a lot of my tools were not working. And not only that, but I could not find the space and the time to do them in a way that was meaningful and was actually alleviating my anxiety. So just the idea, I was at a point in January 2024 where just the idea of taking time to address my anxiety and just taking time to relax was stressful in itself, because all I could think about was all of the other things on my to-do list that were not happening, were not getting done, and things were starting to go missing. I was starting to make mistakes at work. I was starting to make mistakes at home. I was starting to make mistakes as an author, and things in my personal life. I was starting to forget things. I had to scramble and barely got Christmas together for my own family because I was so focused on trying to hit all the marks at work and do all the things that I almost nearly forgot to take care of my own family. And that was a massive problem. And in January of 2024, I hit a really dark place, a really low, and I needed to find an out. And before things really exploded and I completely fell apart, I knew I needed to take time off from everything. So I took a hiatus. I took about a week off from my day job as a school counselor. I took time off from being an author. I took time off from YouTube. I took almost an entire month off from YouTube, and I really just unplugged from everything in my life and then slowly integrated it back in. So I started with doing a period of really deep self-reflection by myself at home. And then I started incorporating friends and family into that and going out a little more with friends and family. And then I started to go back to work. And it was during that period where I was reintegrating things into my life, trying to come from a place of gratitude and thinking very, very much of what I wanted in my life, that a phrase came to me that really stuck and was super important to me. And that was chase more joy. So when I was reintegrating everything into my life, I was thinking about what things really bring me joy and make me feel fulfilled and are motivating to me. And those were the things I started to incorporate first. And as I started to do that, I realized that my environment was having a gigantic negative impact on me. And the people I was surrounded with were filling my cup, and I loved those people and wanted to spend more time with them. And I needed to do more writing, and I really, really, really needed to prioritize myself, my dreams, my goals, and foster my own community in a way that was authentic. So there comes authentic, but also a way that led me towards chasing more joy and finding my way towards fulfilling my dreams, which is being a full-time author, creating more things, just all of that author. So chase more joy. That kind of became my mantra for the rest of the school year. So I came back, I reintegrated work into my life. I actually went ahead. It was like April by that point, and I put in my notice that I was leaving. So I was leaving the world of education. I was leaving school counseling. I let everyone know, and I started to build the foundation of a life that was on my own terms, in my control, and met my dreams and ambitions. And so in doing that, I focused on finishing my LPC credentials, which is licensed professional counselor. And what I love about that is it's all of the things that matter most to me on like a soulful level. So mental health has always been important to me. And that was my favorite part of being a school counselor, was really helping young individuals develop their own goals, their ideas of who they were, and help them to get to a mentally healthier and physically healthier place in their lives. And I realized very quickly that while there was very little time to do a lot of that one-on-one work in school counseling because of the gigantic caseloads, I could develop my own business as a professional therapist where I do only that piece, and I set my own hours and I do it on my own terms, and I take on as many people as I want, and I do the cases I enjoy. And so I focused at the end of 2024, or I have been, on creating a life that fulfills me, a life where I have the time and I prioritize chasing more goals and chasing more joy. And I do so in a authentic way that is positive and fosters kindness and empathy in others. So Read Books, Be Kind developed out of a really low point in my life where I needed to completely change the structure of my life and my business and my goals and really put myself first. And that is where I launched Read Books, Be Kind. And originally it was just videos here and there on YouTube where I would talk about mental health, how I was doing, how I'm prioritizing myself. I started a monthly self-care vlog on my YouTube channel where I sort of detailed everything I did that was strictly for me, for my goals, just for me, and moving myself forward. And after a few months of that, the podcast idea started to come back around, and this kindness campaign that we talked about at work started to come back around. And I realized that I wanted to do more of that. I wanted to talk more about it because I could feel myself getting energized every time I talked about Read Books, Be Kind. And the way I was doing it on my YouTube channel just wasn't fitting the bigger scope of it. And I wanted it to go past just me. I was at a point now where I wanted to bring in other people, and I wanted to basically go back to that YouTube series I did so long ago where I talked about other authors and their journey, and I wanted to incorporate my own and learn again. So Read Books, Be Kind became this place for me to chat with other authors, share kindness and empathy, and podcast. So that is why I am incorporating it into my YouTube channel and also launching this as a podcast, and why I want to share not just my story of mental health struggles and how you can totally meet all of your goals and expectations and manifest the life that you dream. And all you have to do is incorporate pieces one at a time, just like I did starting in January. So I wanted to bring on more stories like that. And that is what we are going to do a lot of here on the Read Books, Be Kind podcast. This episode is sponsored by me, Amy Prokopis. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Your support means the world to me. Make sure that you are following me online. And lastly, check out all of my fantasy romance books. I promise you won't want to miss out. Now, back to the episode. So, mental health has always been a really big importance to me, and it has definitely come through in my writing. So, through my journey, especially as I've finished my LPC, I have developed a lot of knowledge, and I have a lot of background now in all things mental health, psychology. I love that stuff. Sociology, how people work, how societies function, and why. I love that stuff. And so I take all of that and I always heavily incorporate it into my books. And I think my book with the most mental health rep has to be Curse of Wings and Darkness. If you are watching it here on YouTube, this podcast, I am holding up the copy of the paperback version of Curse of Wings and Darkness, which is my vampire romance. It is a little steamy. There are a couple spicy scenes in this book, and this is a new series. This just came out in October 1st, 2024, and this is the first in a brand new series, and it will get spicier as we go. And I wrote this book because I wanted to incorporate a bit more mental health. I wanted to show how there can be strength even in people who, and even in dark times when you don't feel strong. So my main character is Lily, and she has anxiety. She's hiding kind of a dark secret. She's coping with some past trauma that she has had, and it's really wreaking havoc on her life. It's making it difficult daily. She's having panic attacks, and she encounters this winged man who saves her when she's out at a club with her roommate, gets into kind of a bad situation, and this winged figure appears and saves her. And she knows, even though she was kind of like inebriated at the time, or very much inebriated, she knows that something's different about him. She knows he has wings. She knows there is something supernatural about him, and she just cannot let go of it and forget about it. And he cannot let go and forget about her, and starts to make a regular appearance in her life. And things just kind of develop from there. So I wrote this book. I really wanted the main character to have some serious struggles, and I wanted to show a story where somebody who maybe is not strong physically and doesn't feel strong emotionally develops and comes into their own strength. And I wanted to create a male character that has all of those things that we love in a typical like whirlwind romance, where, you know, he's the sort of dark horse character. He's strong. He takes care of her. This is a like touch her and die kind of trope series. And I wanted to show a male character who is all of those things, but also allowed the space and empowered the female main character to be that for herself as well and develop into that, and not be just this ultimate masculine protector like some stories are. I wanted this to be one where the main character could see her own strength and showed that in the story. So that is where Read Books, Be Kind, not Read Books, Be Kind, but Curse of Wings and Darkness takes us. So things I love about writing, and especially where my mental health background has come in, I've been able to write books like Curse of Wings and Darkness, where I have mental health rep, but I also really enjoy that it allows me to write more detailed characters and also characters with more layers. So my favorite characters to write are actually the villains. I love writing a morally gray character, and that is what Angel Ramirez, the male character in Curse of Wings and Darkness, is. He is a tortured soul. He's a vampire. He doesn't want to be a vampire, but he's forced to live this existence in shadows, and he's forced to feed on human blood. That's not something that he can get around, and he is disgusted with himself for that. So he's kind of an anti-hero a little bit. I love writing villains that are uncomfortably relatable, is the way I would put it. And so there are some villains in this entire series. In Curse of Wings and Darkness, we'll encounter several. And while they are the villains of the story, you can kind of see where they're coming from. And that is what I really like about psychology, is I really believe that people are not inherently good or bad. I think our experiences and our influences in life truly shape us. I think it's a bit of nature versus nurture. And that is something I lean heavily on in my writing. I don't want my villains to just be people that you hate automatically because they're the villain. I want you to also feel a little sorry for them, or feel like you understand them, or maybe feel a little bit like they're not necessarily like truly the villain at all. So that's a little bit about Curse of Wings and Darkness and some of my characters that come into play in this series. So Curse of Wings and Darkness, that is that. I would read the blurb, but I feel like I gave a really good description already. So if you would like to learn more about my spicy vampire romance that has mental health representation, you can do that by checking out the links in the description box, where I will make sure to link this book. So that's a little bit more about that book. I will say trigger warnings. There is trigger warnings for past SA attempt not completed. And there is some talk about homophobia from family members in this book for a side character. So if that is anything that might be a little heavy to you or might be triggering, then you may want to steer clear of this book. There is not any on-page essay, so it's not that deep, but there is discussion about past events. So just in case that may be harmful to somebody, take that into consideration. Take your own mental health into consideration and put this book aside, at least for now, and maybe come back to it when you're feeling a bit better if you are somebody that might be triggered at this time by that kind of discussion. So that's that book. Angel is one of my favorite characters I think I have ever written. He's just a tortured soul. The big question in this book for Angel, because in some ways, while this story is the series, is the story of Lily Thompson finding her own, finding healing, finding love, and a life she's never expected, and finding some surprising abilities in herself. It's also a story of Angel, this tortured soul, this vampire who thinks he's a truly disgusting, damned individual. And his ultimate question of like, how do you cope and heal from past deeds that you're not proud of when your existence mandates that you have to repeat them? So how do you cope with that when you're in a constant cycle? And how do you find your way out of that and break that cycle? And the overarching story in this series is about Lily finding her own and healing herself, and Angel healing himself as well, and finding the cure for vampirism so that he can break the circle of his tortured existence and move on and hopefully grow old and live a life that is fulfilling to him. So I love this story so much. It's one of my favorites that I have ever written, and I really hope you guys will love it too. So that's how anxiety, my own anxiety, mental health, my background in mental health, and my hopes for this podcast really meet with my writing and my process. So I do plan to share a lot more about my process as an author and more of how mental health and mental health representation has a part in that. And yeah, other stories like mine, and maybe some others that are completely different from mine. But I want this podcast to empower you. I want you to take away from my struggles. What I want you to have taken away from my struggles is that you really can create the life that you desire, but it's going to take some self-reflection, and it may take weeding out some of that negativity and those limiting beliefs out of your life. Because when I was in my low point, just as the Read Books Be Kind campaign began, really felt there was a moment there where I felt like I wasn't going to be able to achieve my dreams because there were all of these things in the way. And for me, a lot of those limiting beliefs were that I don't have the time. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We often feel like I don't have the time to, I don't know, I don't have the time to go on a walk. I need to do the dishes, I have to do the laundry. I just don't have the time to go on a walk. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. So maybe you don't have time to take that 30-minute walk that you'd like, but maybe you could go around the block for like a couple of minutes and come back. And honestly, just a few minutes to yourself to reflect on things and just take a deep breath for yourself. Just a couple of seconds can be rejuvenating and release a lot of those negative thoughts and feelings that you're having about yourself and your life and the frustrations that you have with it. So maybe you can't take a walk right now. Maybe it's not 30 minutes. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe it's taking the time to do the dishes and not just doing the dishes because you have to do it, but slowing down, doing the dishes and reflecting on the things you're thankful for. Even though you may feel like everything is terrible right now and this day has been really stressful and everything went wrong today, maybe it's taking that time while you're sitting at the sink doing the dishes to reflect on things were not great, but here's what I am thankful for. And here are some things that are really great about my life and the people around me and my abilities and things that are in my control, even though you may feel like things are out of your control that day. I want you to take away from Read Books Be Kind. I want you to have kindness for yourself, because ultimately the kindness part in Read Books Be Kind is empathy for yourself and others and moving forward in a real way that shapes the way you want the world to look for yourself. So I hope that's something that resonates with you, because that really resonates with me today. I kind of needed that today. So Read Books Be Kind. This next segment is one of my favorites that we are going to incorporate into every episode of this podcast. I try to remind myself weekly, usually daily, to find more joy. So, what is something that has brought you joy recently? I want you to comment that at the bottom of this video. Leave a comment if you're on YouTube. Leave a comment there. What has brought you joy recently? If you're listening to this podcast, or maybe you're hopping over to my social media accounts, leave your comment somewhere. What is something that has brought you joy and has really filled your cup recently? Really think on that, meditate on it. For me, I'm finding joy in letting go of comparison and exploring creative projects outside of writing, things just for fun. So something I've come back to recently that has just been for me, just because I enjoy it, is making jewelry. Funnily enough, if you're watching the YouTube video of this podcast, I am wearing a pair of earrings that I made actually during that time. So I am finding joy in the little things. I'm finding joy in activities that I do for myself that make me feel good. And it's strictly for the fun of it. So I'm trying to do more of that in my daily life. If you are not a Patreon member, you should be, because on my Patreon account, you get early announcements, an inside look at all of my writing, and it is just $5 a month. That will also get you extended versions of this podcast and other bonus videos and freebies and all kinds of funsies about my publishing process. So it's only $5 a month. I am beginning to be very active. It is my priority, actually, one of my priorities going into 2025. So go and check it out. The link's in the description box. You can check it out. There will be a bonus episode or extended version, of this podcast right there. So in the extended version of this episode, I will be reading from Curse of Wings and Darkness. I will be discussing behind the scenes things about this book, things I haven't talked about anywhere else as we read through the entirety of this book on Patreon. So if you are interested in that, the first episode, we will be reading chapters 1, 2, and 3 from Curse of Wings and Darkness. That'll be only on Patreon when you subscribe for $5 a month. So that is that. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you are hanging out with us on YouTube, I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment below with your thoughts. Make sure that you are following me on all of my social media so we can connect. Again, thank you so much for joining today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you do something today to chase more joy in your life. Be grateful for something today. What are you grateful for? What are you going to do for yourself today to meet your dreams, build the life that you want to live, and chase more joy? So don't forget to find more joy in the little things. You are worth it. And as always, read books, be kind. I will see you in the next one. Bye.